So look at this. Tucker interviewed Alex Jones the other day. By the way, got him reinstated back on. We should do that next.
Right.
Got him reinstated back on Twitter's, and I'm not calling it X.
Yeah, I'm dead naming it. I'm calling it Twitter.
That's right. We're dead naming it. As Kurt says, I'm going so far as I'm not even saying Malcolm X anymore.
Malcolm Twitter.
That's right.
The great Malcolm Twitter.
The great Malcolm Twitter. So here, but he played this clip during that interview. Look at all the predictions that Alex Jones actually got right.
Of September, that the new policy is being written, you will all have to wear masks again, and so will airport employees.
It's happening. Mask mandates are officially back.
We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun, where if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s.
This group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden.
He's the boogeyman they need. We're looking at a giant...
How the hell did he know that?
Because they were, for the same reason that George Bush and the other should have known it, because everyone knew it. Apparently, it was a warning, and these groups that we funded, we knew were, talking about doing something like this. So you don't have to be a prophet. I mean, every single time, it's like all the things are right there if someone feels like looking at it to prevent, but they just never want to do it.
So it's kind of like October 7th, also.
I mean, without fail, I can't think of a single thing.
They had the literal blueprint of the plan that Hamas had.
It's aspirational.
I have a theory about this, because there were a lot of people in New York before 9/11. This is like an untold story of 9/11. A lot of people were saying that New York was going to get hit by a major terrorist attack. Like, this was a pretty conventional wisdom kind of thing. I have a video of a show that went on in one of my theaters where the guy did a monologue about it, about how we all know that we're going to get hit by a terrorist attack. That was about a year before 9/11. To get a job in the CIA or the FBI, one of the questions they ask you is if you've ever smoked pot or you've ever taken psychedelic drugs, if you've ever done anything like that. And if you say yes, you're out. I don't think anybody who got through high school without smoking a joint is going to have the imagination to really project what terrorists are likely to do. I think you wind up with a lot of very uncreative, very flatline kind of people who just don't think outside the box. This is why after 9/11 they brought in Hollywood screenwriters to War Game, because they don't have people who can really do that effectively.
Well, also they had some people that imagined it because they wrote it down and said, pass this up the chain. Yeah. And it didn't. The people like, shut up.
It landed on George Bush's desk. It was in his briefing. Osama bin Laden set to attack inside the United States, and he ignored it.
I think you only move up if you're telling the guy above you what he wants to hear.
And they were actually
the guy who he's going to move him up if he does it.
They were actually doing war game scenarios where the terrorists would take planes and fly them into buildings.
Yeah.
At the very time, I know that because of James Corbett. Let me rewind this one more time.
Person named Osama bin Laden.
He's the boogeyman they need. We're looking at a giant war in February right now. I predict the Russians are going to roll in. They're already there. They're going to roll in.
With attacks across Ukraine, which is the size of Texas.
It really was.
Isn't that amazing that he knew that was coming? So he predicted 9/11. He predicted Russia's invasion of Donbass and Ukraine, and everybody else is caught flat-footed.
Well, the same secret is, I don't know, everything we talked about Ukraine for 2 years, that just now they're all saying there's an embargo on telling. There's like an embargo on telling the truth. They're like, don't tell the truth until this date.
That's right.
When it's cool. And you don't have to be a prophet.
That's right.
You can literally just look at the thing in front of your goddamn face.
Let me play this.
Iraqis. That's just because they're getting ready to invade Iraq. And what a beautiful setup.
So that was... Let me play one more time.
Of September, that the new policy is being written. you will all have to wear masks again, and so will airport employees.
It's happening. Mask mandates are officially back.
We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun, or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s,
This group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden.
he's the boogeyman they need. We're looking at a giant war in February right now. I predict the Russians are going to roll in. They're already there. They're going to roll in.
with attacks across Ukraine, which is the size of Texas.
It really was the Iraqis. That's just because they're getting ready to invade Iraq. And what a beautiful setup.
So, yeah, he's got a much, much, much better hit rate than Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, that's for sure. And now you know why they have to silence a guy like that. I was shocked. I did not know he predicted 9/11 and did it to a T.
Yeah, I do remember that, seeing the tapes of it when
I don't
years ago, and not being impressed. Like it didn't. I was like,
I'm impressed.
Yeah, now
I'm impressed. Let me bring in do Dissidence. What do you say about this?
Well, I saw a loose change in college, and I had already known some of the things in there. My one of my college friends, it was like 2005. He calls me up. We didn't have texting at the time. He calls me up. Keaton, you got to come up to my room and watch this movie. I said, what movie? He says, 9/11 was an inside job. I'm like, yeah, I know that, but what's the movie? And so I go up and I watch the movie, and that is what put him on the map. Like this thing, like he was kind of a figure he was never really of the left, but he was very popular among left wingers for the 9/11 stuff, the Iraq War stuff. Yeah, it is eerie. And the Ukraine thing, to get the date pretty much exactly right too. There's a big war coming in February. I mean, that is wild. And you see him sitting there with Tucker Carlson. Jimmy, I sent you this video. I know you saw it. The video of Tucker earlier this year saying, this was pre-October 7th. You know, he says, 2024 is not going to be this nice little election between Biden and Trump. He says, trust me, all the powers that be have something in store for us. We don't know what it is yet, but these decisions are forced on us. And so I think maybe some of that predictive power comes from just rejecting everything that you see, right? Rejecting all of the blue pill dog and pony show of electoral politics, right? Like he had, I mean, until 2016 when he backed Trump, Alex Jones really didn't engage in any of that. He did not follow that stuff at all. He was looking under the surface of all of that stuff. I'm not saying everything he said was right and true, but when you look in those places, you start to analyze things on that level. And I think maybe that's where some of that comes from.
Probably has tips from people. And then, so, by the way, if you could very easily give a guy real tips, and then
I think that's what happened to him.
Yeah, and then you give him a bad tip.
I think the CIA wanted to discredit him, so instead of giving him good tips, they gave him that bad tip, which ruined everything for him and got him kicked. Well, that's actually not what got him kicked. The Sandy Hook stuff is not what got him kicked off social media. Did you know that?
That just got him $1 billion settlement. $1 billion seems high. Seems high for the
because he got deplatformed 6 years after that. So what was it that got him deplatformed? Because I know they just decided in 2018 that he couldn't.
We have another. I think I have another segment coming up where we talk about that.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So, Russ, any last things to say about this?
Well, I hear Trump is putting him in charge of the NSA.
Okay.
I think he's a smart guy who pays attention, and I mean the information is there. You know, even Noam Chomsky says, don't stop reading the Times. There's a lot of information in there. It's a question of how you read it. I think he's very good at connecting the dots.
Yeah, you got to read it sideways and look over it through the corner of your eye. And you can get the information. Okay. But Chomsky is a firm believer in the official narrative of 9/11.
Is he?
It's amazing.
Yes.
So that was the place nobody would go.
Me.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, as someone who thought 9/11 was an inside job from October 2002, it was amazing to me to see a lot of heroes of mine just very, very stubbornly refuse to even engage in any questioning of that. I mean, the dogma surrounding that was, I mean, look, even if you didn't, there's a few different versions of this. I don't want to derail the whole show, but like you could say it was an inside job, meaning it was a controlled demolition of the Twin Towers themselves. There was nanothermite, right? I'm not smart enough to argue that. I can't argue chemistry and shit, physics like that. What I can give you is the circumstantial timeline of Project for a New American Century puts a document out saying we want to invade Iraq. We can't invade Iraq absent a new Pearl Harbor. They come to power under dubious circumstances. I'll say that for YouTube. 8 months after that, they get a memo saying bin Laden's going to attack inside the U.S. using airplanes. That memo goes ignored. The event happens. And then a year later, they start the war that they wanted to start back in the 90s.
Sure.
You can't tell me that timeline transpired by accident and for no reason. You can't tell me that. Now, the other stuff, the physics,
9/11 was
that's
safe
way
and
above
effective.
my pay grade. I don't know about that. I couldn't argue that. But the timeline is just, it's impossible that all of that happened by accident and for no reason.
Well, at that moment, very much like COVID, and you if you remember, that was the thing you could not say. Just like with COVID, yes. there were those things. If you said that was it, that was the end of your career, that was the end of your ability to function in society. Exactly. Saying that 9/11 was fishy, that was the thing you couldn't say then.
You could say it more than you could say COVID stuff, though. COVID was
nobody
way more
did,
of a crackdown.
But nobody
I remember
did.
Jeremy Scahill from The Intercept, this big foreign policy guy. He got a question asked to him at some event he did, and he just swatted it away. He didn't even bother, ripping the guy an asshole. He just said, "Well, I don't think there's anything to that." They wouldn't go near it. They wouldn't touch it. You couldn't even you couldn't even get a question answered.
So
they would just ignore it. They would just push you. That's it.
When we started our podcast with Todd Glass, and I think it was 2007 or 2008, that was called Comedy and Everything Else. I went over Building 7 then, and I was like, "There's no way that this happened." And then there were people, this is before social media became big, but there were people trying to smear me as, "Oh, Jimmy Dore's a truther." They were calling me a truther.
Right.
I'm like, that Building 7? I'm not saying anything about, I'm talking Building 7. It was obviously that. By the way, we covered Building 7. We brought on the head engineer from the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, who debunked the official story of Building 7. And lo and behold, YouTube demonetized it. Lo and behold, huh?
Shocker.
So
you're lucky that's all they did.
So I'm going
to... Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt is right that those were different times and the censorship regime just wasn't as strict back then. The people in power didn't feel as threatened by dissent. But it was the COVID narrative for its time. It was that thing that if you were a professor or a lawyer or a professional who really, or a politician in a position where you really relied on the approval of the establishment, you couldn't say that. But by the time you get to COVID, social media is fully developed. The censorship regime is fully developed. Basically, we're living in a post 9/11 world. At that time, they hadn't really put together that world yet, where they can fully destroy you in the way that they can now.
Well, they got to just say to say a truther, like as soon as somebody says truther or something, which is, by the way, hilarious that's a kind of insult.
That's so Orwellian that they can take a word like truth
and the truth
and turn it into a negative.
Yeah, but they're just calling you a name and then taking like stupider theories than what the evidence shows, and then you're saying that, oh, the Jews did 9/11. That's what you're saying. No, who said that? Oh, I guess you think Jews did it because they were seen high-fiving after the chat. And so as soon as all you got to do is put out a crazier thing than what there might be evidence for and spread that. And then, I don't want to be with the people who think that crazy thing. Like, it's the same playbook every time.
Okay, over to Steph.
All right. Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit